Ezekiel Harrington never wanted a black mail-order bride, but when Serafina Bell stepped off the train with a single tear tracking down her cheek, every word of rejection died in his throat. The locomotive hissed steam across the platform. Copper Creek Station buzzed with the usual chaos of arrival. Passengers hauled carpetbags and crates. Children darted between adult legs. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the mountain air. Zeke clutched his sister's letter. The paper had worn soft from his angry handling over the past week. Margaret had arranged this match without telling him the most important detail. A detail that made his jaw clench and his prejudices burn hot. He scanned the departing passengers. His plan was simple. Find the woman. Put her back on the train. Send a telegram to Margaret expressing his fury in words that would blister the telegraph wires. Then she appeared. Serafina Bell descended the train steps with the grace of someone who had once known better days. Her dark blue dress showed careful mending at the cuffs. Her small traveling bag spoke of a life condensed to essentials. But her posture remained straight, her chin lifted despite the hostile stares from other passengers. The tear caught the light as it traced her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, scanning the crowd with eyes that held both hope and resignation. Zeke found himself walking toward her before conscious thought engaged. His prepared speech crumbled. The words he had rehearsed scattered in the mountain wind. "Miss Bell?" His voice came out rougher than intended. She turned those dark eyes on him. Something flickered across her features, recognition of disappointment about to come. "Yes, sir. I suppose you are here to tell me there has been a mistake." Her voice carried education, refinement, not what he had expected, not what his assumptions had prepared him for. The train whistle blew. Last call for boarding. The engine would carry passengers east within minutes. All he had to do was nod, confirm her suspicion, watch her climb back aboard. Instead, he stood frozen. That single tear had done something to his certainty, cracked something in the armor of his convictions. "I am Ezekiel Harrington." The words came without his permission. She studied his face, searching for clues about her fate. "I have a ranch outside town." He gestured vaguely toward the mountains. "It is not much, but it is home." Hope flickered. In her eyes, cautious and fragile, the train lurched. Steam billowed. The conductor called final boarding. Zeke watched the iron beast prepare to depart and made a decision that surprised him more than anyone. He picked up her bag. The ride to the ranch passed in loaded silence. Serafina sat straight on the wagon seat beside him, her hands folded carefully in her lap. She studied the landscape with genuine interest rather than the fear he had expected. The mountains rose around them like ancient guardians. Pine and aspen covered the slopes in autumn colors. The air carried the scent of coming winter. "It is beautiful," she said softly. Her appreciation caught him off guard. Most people saw only wilderness and hardship. Winter comes early here. He did not know why he felt compelled to warn her. The next train east does not run for 2 weeks. She nodded as if this information held no particular weight. The ranch buildings appeared as they crested the final hill. Modest structures weathered gray by mountain storms. Corrals holding his small herd. A barn that needed new shingles. Home, but nothing grand. 2 men emerged from the barn as the wagon approached. Marcus, his longtime hand, wiped grease from his fingers with a rag. Billy, barely 20 and eager as a puppy, grinned at the sight of company. "Boys, this is Miss Bell." Zeke helped her down from the wagon. "She will be staying for a while." Marcus touched his hat brim. His weathered face showed neither surprise nor judgment. "Ma'am," Billy practically bounced on his toes. "Pleased to meet you, miss. We do not get much company out here." Serafina smiled. The expression transformed her face completely. "The pleasure is mine, gentlemen." She insisted on carrying her own bag to the house. Zeke showed her to the spare room, clean but sparse. A narrow bed, a washstand, a window facing the mountains. "It is not fancy, it is perfect." She set down her bag and smoothed the quilt with careful fingers. Thank you. He left her to settle and returned to the kitchen. Margaret had arranged for supplies to be delivered. Flour, sugar, coffee, items a ranch usually lacked. His sister had planned this more carefully than he realized. That evening, Serafina emerged from her room transformed. She had changed into a simple work dress and pinned her hair back practically. Without asking permission, she had taken inventory of the kitchen and begun preparing supper. The smell of cornbread filled the house. Something that might have been stew bubbled on the Maiwa stove. Marcus and Billy hovered near the doorway, drawn by aromas they had almost forgotten. I insist on earning my keep, she said when Zeke protested. I am not a guest to be waited upon. They ate in awkward silence. The food surpassed anything the ranch had seen in years. Serafina served the men first, then took her own modest portion. She asked thoughtful questions about the ranch operations. Her interest seemed genuine. After supper, she insisted on washing dishes. Billy offered to help and she accepted with grace. The young man chattered about ranch life while she listened with the patience of someone accustomed to making others comfortable. Zeke found himself studying her movements. Efficient but unhurried, competent hands that suggested familiarity with work. This woman possessed depths his assumptions had not accounted for. Later, as the men sat on the porch sharing coffee and watching stars emerge, Billy voiced what they all wondered. She seems real nice, boss. Different than what folks in town might expect. Marcus shot the younger man a warning look. Some subjects required careful handling. She is educated, Zeke said finally. Speaks well, works hard. Kind too, Billy added. You can see it in how she treats folks. They sat in contemplative silence. The mountains loomed black against star-scattered sky. Somewhere in the house, Serafina moved quietly about her evening routine. Zeke found his convictions shifting like sand. Everything he thought he knew felt suddenly uncertain. That single tear at the train station had started something he could not control. A sound from inside made him look up. Through the window, he glimpsed Serafina at the kitchen table. She held a piece of paper in trembling hands. Even from outside, he could see her fear. As he watched, she carried the paper to the stove and fed it to the flames. Her shoulders shook as she watched it burn. When she turned from the fire, tears streaked her face. But these tears carried a different weight than the one at the station. These spoke of terror barely held in check. 3 days passed before Zeke could no longer avoid taking Serafina to town. Supplies ran low. The ranch needed salt for the cattle. Winter preparations demanded materials only Copper Creek could provide. He hitched the wagon with reluctant hands. The leather traces felt heavier than usual. His fingers fumbled with familiar buckles. Serafina emerged from the house wearing her traveling dress. The same one from the train station, but somehow different now. She had pressed it carefully, mended a small tear near the hem. Dignity worn threadbare but unbroken. You do not have to come, he said. I need fabric for winter quilts. Thread for mending. She climbed onto the wagon seat without assistance. I will not hide. The ride to town stretched longer than memory served. Each mile brought them closer to judgment. To stares. To words that cut deeper than mountain wind. Copper Creek huddled in the valley bottom. False-fronted buildings lined the main street. Hitching posts stood ready for Saturday trade. The town had grown since the railroad arrived. Prosperity and problems in equal measure. Zeke pulled the wagon up to Henderson's general store. Other shoppers moved along the boardwalk. Conversations died as they noticed the wagon's passengers. Eyes lingered, whispers followed. The store bell chimed their entrance. Mrs. Henley looked up from her ledger. Her face hardened when she saw Serafina. We need supplies, Zeke said. Mrs. Henley's gaze remained fixed on Serafina. We serve respectable customers. The words hung in the air. Sharp enough to draw blood. My money spends the same as anyone's. Not in my store. Serafina touched Zeke's arm. A gentle pressure that said she understood, that she had faced worse. That dignity meant more than commerce. The door chimed again. Eleanor Patterson entered. With her market basket. The doctor's wife took in the scene with intelligent eyes. "Mrs. Henley, I believe you have my order ready." The storekeeper's attention shifted. "Of course, Mrs. Patterson." Eleanor moved to stand beside Seraphina. "You must be the young woman staying at the Harrington place." "I am Eleanor Patterson." "Seraphina Bell, it is a pleasure. The pleasure is mine." Eleanor's voice carried authority earned through years of tending the sick. "Mrs. Henley, please add thread and fabric to my order, the blue calico and white cotton." The storekeeper's mouth tightened. But Eleanor Patterson's husband delivered babies and set bones. Her word carried weight. They completed their business in tense silence. Mrs. Henley counted change with deliberate slowness. Her disapproval seasoned every transaction. Outside, Eleanor walked beside them to the wagon. "Do not let her narrow thinking discourage you. This town needs more people with backbone." Sheriff Tom Bradley approached from across the street. His badge caught the afternoon light. His expression remained carefully neutral. "Zeke." He touched his hat brim to Seraphina. "Ma'am, Tom. Heard you had company out at the ranch." The sheriff's tone held no judgment, only observation. "News travels fast. Always does." Bradley's eyes swept the street. "Some folks are talking. Might be wise to avoid stirring things up unnecessarily." The warning came wrapped in friendship, but warning nonetheless. "I appreciate your concern. Just want to keep the peace." Bradley nodded to both of them. "Ma'am," as they loaded supplies. Into the wagon, a group of men emerged from the saloon. Wade Morrison led them. His Confederate gray coat had faded, but his bitterness remained sharp. Morrison's eyes found Seraphina. His gaze held the weight of old wars and older hatreds. "Harrington." Zeke straightened. His hand moved instinctively to rest on the wagon's edge. "Morrison. Interesting company you are keeping these days." "My business is my own. Not when it affects the whole community." Morrison stepped closer. His followers formed a loose circle. "Some things are better left in the past. Some things change whether we want them to or not." Morrison's smile held no warmth. "Change is one thing. Making poor choices is another." Seraphina remained perfectly still beside the wagon. Her composure never wavered. But Zeke saw the slight tremor in her hands. "My choices do not require your approval. They might require your neighbor's understanding." Morrison's voice carried threat wrapped in reason. "Community support matters when winter comes, when cattle need to be sold, when a man needs friends." The message was clear. Choose sides carefully. Other townspeople gathered to watch. Some faces showed curiosity. Others displayed open hostility. A few held sympathy carefully hidden. "Good day, Morrison." Zeke helped Seraphina onto the wagon seat. Her movements remained graceful despite the scrutiny. She settled her skirts with careful precision. As they drove away, Morrison's voice followed them. "Think about what matters most, Harrington, before you lose everything that does." The ride home passed in heavy silence. The mountains rose around them like protective walls. Distance muffled the town's judgment. "I am sorry," Seraphina said finally. "For what?" "For bringing trouble to your door." Zeke considered this. The woman beside him had done nothing wrong, had shown only dignity and grace. Yet her presence had made him enemies. The trouble was already there. You just made it visible. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching sunset paint the mountains, Zeke found himself studying Seraphine's profile, the proud line of her jaw, the intelligence in her eyes, the strength that carried her through each day's small humiliations. Something had shifted during their town visit. Not just his understanding of community prejudice. Something deeper. A recognition that this woman possessed qualities he had never expected to find. Qualities that challenged everything he thought he knew. Marcus emerged from the barn. His weathered face showed concern. "Boss," Billy heard talk in town. "Some of the ranchers are meeting tomorrow night." Wade Morrison called it. Zeke nodded. He had expected this. "What do you want to do?" The question hung between them, loaded with implications, weighted with consequences. Zeke looked at Serafina. She sat perfectly still, hands folded in her lap, waiting for his decision, prepared for whatever came next. "We keep doing what we are doing, living our lives, taking care of our own." Marcus smiled. "Yes, sir." Later, as the house settled into evening quiet, Zeke heard Serafina moving about the kitchen, preparing for tomorrow's meals, making herself useful, earning her place through quiet competence. He thought about Morrison's words, about community, support, and the price of choices, about the woman who had stepped off the train with tears in her eyes and dignity in her bearing. The math was simple. Keeping her meant losing friends, meant facing isolation, meant standing against the current of accepted thinking. But watching her face that day's hostility with unbroken grace had done something to his certainty, had shown him courage he had not known he possessed. The mountain wind carried the scent of coming winter. Change was coming whether he chose it or not. The question was whether he had the strength to meet it standing up. The blizzard arrived 3 days before Thanksgiving. Snow fell in sheets that erased the world beyond the porch. Wind howled through the mountains with voices that spoke of winter's true power. Zeke stood at the kitchen window watching his cattle huddle against the barn. The thermometer outside read 15 below. The storm had trapped them all for 2 days already. "The yearlings will not survive this cold without shelter," he said. Serafina looked up from the pot of stew she stirred. "What can be done?" "Nothing, not in this wind." She set down her spoon, walked to the window beside him. Her breath fogged the glass as she studied the storm. "My grandfather kept cattle through Georgia winters. Different cold, but cold nonetheless." She traced patterns on the fogged glass. "He mixed molasses with their feed. Said it heated them." From inside, Zeke turned to study her profile. "We have molasses. We would need to reach them." The barn stood 50 yards from the house. 50 yards of white death and howling wind. Men had died in shorter distances during storms like this. Too dangerous, perhaps. But cattle definitely die if we do nothing. She spoke truth. Hard truth wrapped in quiet logic. They roped themselves together with Marcus and Billy, fought through snow that reached their waists. The wind tried to tear them apart, tried to steal their breath and their direction. The barn felt warm as summer after the storm's bite. The cattle lowed with distress. Their breath steamed in the cold air. Serafina moved among them with confidence, her hands gentle on their flanks. She spoke softly as she examined each animal. "This one is weakest." She indicated a young heifer. "We start with her." They mixed molasses into warm water and coaxed the cattle to drink. Serafina showed them how to massage the mixture into their feed, how to read the signs of cold sickness in their eyes and breathing. "Where did you learn this?" Marcus asked. "My grandfather raised stock in Georgia, before the war. Her hands never stopped working. He taught me to see what cattle needed." They worked through the afternoon. The storm raged outside, but the barn held steady. By evening, the cattle showed improvement. Their eyes brighter, their movements stronger. "You saved them," Billy said with admiration. Serafina shook her head. "We all did." But Zeke saw the truth. Without her knowledge, half his herd would have died. His ranch would have faced ruin. The storm broke on the 3rd day. Sunshine turned snow to diamond dust. The world emerged crystalline and transformed. 2 weeks later, smoke rose from the Jennings place 3 miles south. Not the comfortable smoke of hearth fires, the thick black smoke of disaster. They rode hard through snow-packed trails, found the Jennings barn collapsed under snow weight, the house threatened by flames that had jumped from the ruined structure. Tom Jennings fought the fire with his sons. His wife Sarah knelt in the snow holding their youngest daughter. The child's Breathing came in labored gasps. She breathed too much smoke, Sarah wept. I cannot wake her properly. Serafina knelt beside them, her hands gentle on the child's face. She listened to the small chest, felt for fever. We need to clear her lungs. Get her breathing clean air. She looked at Sarah. Do you trust me? Sarah nodded through her tears. Serafina worked with steady hands, positioned the child to help her breathing, showed Sarah how to keep the small airways clear. Her movements spoke of knowledge gained through necessity. You know healing, Sarah whispered. Some, enough to help. The child's breathing eased. Color returned to her cheeks. Sarah sobbed with relief. While men fought the fire, Serafina tended other injuries, burns and cuts from falling timber. She moved with quiet competence. Her touch brought comfort. The fire died as evening approached. The barn was lost, but the house survived. The Jennings family would endure. Tom Jennings found Zeke as they prepared to leave. Your woman saved my daughter's life. The words hung in the cold air. Your woman, as if something had been decided, acknowledged. She has gentle hands, Zeke said. More than that, she has a healer's heart. The ride home passed in thoughtful silence. Serafina sat the saddle with easy grace. Her face showed the exhaustion of the day's work. Where did you learn healing? Zeke asked. Necessity teaches what schools cannot. She adjusted her coat against the wind. When you are responsible for others, you learn what keeps them breathing. That evening, they sat by the fire sharing coffee and the comfortable silence of shared work. The flames cast dancing shadows on the walls. You have surprising knowledge, he said. Is that troubling? He considered this. The woman beside him had depths he was still discovering, skills that challenged his assumptions about what she should know. No, it is impressive, she smiled. The expression transformed her face completely. My grandfather believed knowledge belonged to anyone willing to learn. He taught me to read, to cipher, to understand the land and what it needed. Not everyone would approve of such teaching. No, but knowledge once learned cannot be taken away. The fire popped and settled. Outside, wind sang through the pines. Winter held the mountains in its grip, but inside, warmth prevailed. You could have let me fail, he said quietly. Let the cattle die. Let the Jennings child suffer. It would have proven your worth unnecessary. She looked at him with eyes that held depths he was beginning to recognize. A person's worth is not proven by another's failure. It is shown through what they choose to do when they can help. Her words carried weight earned through living them, through choosing dignity over bitterness, through extending grace where none was expected. Zeke found himself studying her hands as she held her coffee cup. Capable hands that had saved his cattle, that had breathed life back into a child, that worked without complaint or expectation of praise. Something fundamental had shifted in his understanding. This woman was not the burden his prejudices had painted. She was a partner, a helpmate, someone whose presence made everything stronger. The revelation unsettled him, made him question certainties he had carried for years. The town will hear about today, he said. About the fire? About what you did, how you helped. She nodded. Will that make things easier or harder? Both. Some minds might change when they saw her compassion in action. Others would find new reasons for resentment. Excellence could threaten as easily as failure. Are you worried? She asked. He looked at her across the firelight. This woman who had stepped off a train with tears in her eyes, who had faced hostility with grace, who had proven herself worthy of respect through quiet competence. No, he realized. I am proud. The admission surprised him with its truth. Somewhere between the train station and this moment, his feelings had transformed completely. She smiled again. Soft and genuine. Thank you. Outside, the mountain wind carried the promise of more snow. Winter would test them again before spring returned. But they had survived the first trials together. That had to count for something. The fever came during the first week of January. Serafina woke shivering despite 3 quilts and a banked fire. Her breath came shallow and quick. Zeke found her trying to dress for morning chores. Her hands shook as she fumbled with buttons. "You are staying in bed. The chickens need feeding." "Billy can manage the chickens." She swayed on her feet. He caught her elbow and guided her back to the narrow bed. Her skin burned beneath his touch. "Just for today," she whispered. The fever climbed through the morning. By noon, she spoke to people who were not there. Her voice carried fragments of memory, pieces of a life she had never shared. "Tell Miss Catherine I finished the French lesson," she murmured. "The conjugations are perfect now." Zeke bathed her forehead with cool water. "Miss Catherine." A name. That suggested education, refinement, not the background he had imagined. "Grandfather, the books are hidden in the root cellar. They will be safe there. Books, hidden books. Knowledge protected from those who would destroy it. Josiah, you must be careful. Clayton is watching the road." Her voice carried terror. Fresh grief. The fever stripped away the careful composure. She wore daily. "He killed them all," she sobbed. Yellow fever took the whole family. Miss Catherine, her parents. Everyone who was kind. Zeke leaned closer. Her words painted pictures of loss beyond imagination. "The inheritance is rightfully mine. Miss Catherine's father wrote it in his will. But Clayton says no court will honor it. Says I have no right to their kindness." Understanding dawned cold and sharp. This was not the simple story he had assumed. Not a former slave seeking freedom. Something far more complex. The money could help so many, she whispered. "Schools for the children. Hope for the future. If I can just keep it safe." Zeke sat back in the chair beside her bed. The woman before him carried secrets that reframed everything. An inheritance, legal documents. A past that involved education and refinement. "Clayton will kill me for it," she said clearly. "Just like he killed Josiah." Her brother's name carried weight of unbearable loss. "I should have died instead. Josiah was good. Josiah was brave. I am just a woman with dangerous papers." "No," Zeke said softly. "You are much more than that." She turned toward his voice, but her eyes remained closed. "Who speaks?" "A friend. I have no friends left. They are all dead." The fever broke near midnight. Serafina woke to find Zeke dozing in the chair beside her bed. Moonlight streamed through the window. The house held winter quiet. "How long have I been ill?" He stirred at her voice. 2 days. "I said things. You spoke some. Nothing that mattered." But his eyes held knowledge. Understanding that changed the air between them. "I should explain. Only if you want to." She struggled to sit up. He helped her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. She felt fragile as glass, breakable. "My name is Serafina Bell Carter. I was companion to Catherine Whitmore. We grew up together. Learned together. She was my dearest friend." The words came. Slowly, carefully chosen. Her family died of yellow fever. All of them except Clayton, her cousin. Before he died, Catherine's father freed me legally, left me money. Sighed I had been daughter to him in all but blood. Zeke remained silent, listening. Clayton returned from the war changed. Bitter, he claimed the inheritance was theft. Said no court would recognize his uncle's will, but the will was legal. Yes, which made me dangerous to his plans. She pulled the quilts closer around her shoulders. He killed my brother to get the papers. Josiah died protecting me. Protecting the future those papers represent. What future? Schools. Education for children who will never have another chance. The money could change lives. Her voice strengthened as she spoke of purpose beyond survival. Clayton wants me dead. The inheritance reverts to him if I die without heirs. Without anyone to claim it. So you came west. I ran west. There is a difference. Spring arrived early that year. Snow melted to reveal green grass pushing through winter's hold. The mountains shed their white mantles. Life returned to the High country. Serafina worked in the garden she had planned during the long winter evenings, her hands gentle with seedlings, her face turned toward the sun. Zeke found himself watching her more often than he should. The way she moved through daily tasks, the intelligence in her eyes when she spoke of books and learning, the strength that carried her through each day despite the weight of her losses. Serafina. She looked up from the bean plants she was tending. Soil darkened her fingers. Her face showed the peace of honest work. I have been thinking. About what? About making this arrangement permanent. She grew very still. Her hands ceased their work among the plants. You mean marriage, a real marriage? Yes, why? The question was fair. Deserved an honest answer. Because you make everything better. The ranch, the community, my understanding of what matters. And because you feel sorry for me. No, because I respect you. Because I find myself caring what happens to you. She returned to her planting, her movements measured and precise. Caring is not the same as love. No, but it might grow into love, given time. Time you may not have. Clayton will find me eventually. Then we face him together. You do not understand what you are offering. He will destroy you to get to. Maybe, or maybe together we are stronger than he expects. She looked at him across the garden. Her eyes held depths of loss and hope in equal measure. I am not what you wanted when you stood on that train platform. No, you are better than what I wanted. You are what I needed. Even knowing the danger? Especially knowing the danger. The sun slanted through the mountain air. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed. The ranch hummed with the business of living. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. But even as he spoke, Zeke knew time was the one thing they might not have. Clayton Whitmore was still out there, still hunting, still determined to claim what he believed was his. The inheritance papers remained hidden in Seraphine's room, waiting, representing hope for some and greed for others. Wade Morrison's threats still echoed from town. The community remained divided. Some hearts had softened after the Jennings fire. Others had hardened against change. Everything balanced on a knife's edge. One wrong move would bring it all crashing down. But watching Serafina tend her garden, Zeke felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. Perhaps that was enough to build on. Perhaps hope was all they really needed. Serafina made her decision during the night hours when courage felt most fragile. She would leave before dawn. Before her presence destroyed everything Zeke had built. She packed by candlelight. Her few possessions fit easily into the carpet bag. The inheritance papers went into the hidden pocket she had sewn into her coat lining. Everything that mattered reduced to what she could carry. The kitchen table received her letter. Words chosen carefully. To explain without revealing too much. Gratitude for his kindness. Regret for the trouble she had brought. Hope that he would understand. Outside, the pre-dawn air carried the scent of coming rain. The mountain stood black against the star-scattered sky. Somewhere in that darkness lay a path to safety, or to destruction. She made it halfway to town. Before the riders appeared, 3 men on horseback blocked the trail ahead. Their silhouettes spoke of purpose and violence. The leader wore a badge that caught the early light. Miss Serafina Bell Carter. His voice carried false authority. You are under arrest for theft. Her hands tightened on the carpet bag. I am Serafina Bell. I have stolen nothing. Federal. Warrant says different. He produced a document. Official seals and signatures that looked genuine in the dim light. But something felt wrong. The way he sat his horse. The manner in which his companions watched the trees. These men hunted rather than served. I have done nothing wrong. That is for the courts to decide. You will come with us. Where is your authority? What court issued this warrant? The leader smiled. Cold calculation masquerading as law. Federal court in Denver. You will have your chance to explain yourself there. Lies wrapped in legal language. Clayton had found her at last. May I see the warrant? No need. You will see it when we arrive. One of his companions shifted restlessly. His hand rested on his gun butt. Not the posture of a lawman, the stance of a killer. I would prefer to speak with Sheriff Bradley first. No time for local authorities. Federal business takes precedence. The rain began as they spoke, light drops that promised deluge. The kind of storm that washed away tracks and buried secrets. In town, Sheriff Bradley emerged from his office as the group approached. His experienced eyes took in the scene. The nervous horses, the tense riders, the woman who clearly traveled against her will. Morning, gentlemen. What brings federal marshals to Copper Creek? The leader produced his badge. Marshal Davis, we have a warrant for this woman's arrest. Bradley stepped closer. His own badge caught the strengthening light. Mighty early for official business. Criminals do not observe office hours. No, they do not. Bradley's tone remained conversational. Mind if I examine your warrant? Federal business does not require local approval. Maybe not, but professional courtesy suggests cooperation. The tension stretched taut as fence wire. Davis and his men exchanged glances, quick communication that spoke of shared guilt. The warrant is in order. We have authority to proceed. I am sure you do. Bradley's hand moved casually to rest on his gun. But I recognized Charlie Sims there. Last I heard, Charlie was wanted for robbery in Kansas. The man identified as Sims tensed. His horse sidled nervously. You must be mistaken, Sheriff. Maybe. But Charlie has that scar across his left cheek. Hard to forget a mark like that. Everything happened quickly after that. Sims reached for his weapon. Bradley drew faster. The morning exploded into chaos. Federal marshals do not ride with known criminals, Bradley said as dust settled. You men are under arrest. Davis raised his hand slowly. You are making a serious mistake, Sheriff. The only mistake was thinking you could run a con in my town. Back at the ranch, Zeke found Seraphine's letter propped against the coffee pot. Her careful script explained everything and nothing. Gratitude and regret in equal measure. He saddled his horse before finishing her words. Whatever danger she faced, she would not face it alone. The ride to town took half the time it should have. His horse's hooves struck sparks from stone. Urgency drove them both beyond caution. He found the aftermath in the sheriff's office. 3 men in cells. Serafina in a chair beside Bradley's desk. Her face pale but determined. They came for me, she said simply. With forged papers and criminal intent, Bradley added. These are bounty hunters, not marshals. Who sent them? Man named Clayton Whitmore. Seems he wants Miss Carter returned to Georgia for crimes she did not commit. Zeke looked at the men in the cells, hard faces marked by violence. Men who would kill for money and call it justice. What happens now? Real federal authorities are coming from Denver. These men will face charges for impersonating officers. And Serafina? She is free to go. No legitimate warrant exists. But freedom felt fragile as spring ice. Clayton would not stop with one failed attempt. He would send others. Keep sending them until he got what he wanted. He will try again, she said quietly. Let him try. Zeke's voice carried new resolve. He will find us ready. You do not understand. He has money, resources. He will not stop until I am dead. Then we make sure he fails. Sheriff Bradley cleared his throat. Might I suggest sending word to the territorial governor? Miss Carter's inheritance is legal. Her rights deserve protection. Will that help? Cannot hurt. Politicians understand money and justice. Sometimes in that order. Outside, the rain had intensified. Water ran in streams down the main street. The storm washed the air clean. But it could not wash away the danger that followed Serafina wherever she went. I should leave, she said as they prepared to return to the ranch. Find somewhere else to hide. Running has not worked so far. No, but it has kept you safe. Safe is not the same as living. She looked at him through the rain. Water plastered her hair to her head. Her clothes clung to her frame. but her eyes held the fierce determination that had carried her this far. "Are you certain? The path ahead will be dangerous." "I am certain." "Then we face it together." They rode home through the storm. Lightning split the sky above the mountains. Thunder rolled through the valleys. The world seemed to shake with the force of change. At the ranch, Marcus and Billy waited with weapons ready. They had heard the gunshots from town, had prepared for whatever came next. "Trouble?" Marcus asked. "Trouble found us," Zeke replied. "But Sheriff Bradley handled it. For now," Serafina added quietly. Billy looked at her with young eyes that had seen too much. "We stand with you, miss. Whatever comes." She smiled through her exhaustion. "Thank you." Inside, they gathered around the kitchen table. The inheritance papers spread before them. Legal documents that represented hope and death in equal measure. "These papers could change lives," she said. "But they might cost us ours. Then we make sure the cost is worth paying." The storm raged outside. But inside, surrounded by people who had chosen to stand with her, Serafina felt something she had not experienced since her brother's death. She felt hope. The federal judge arrived from Denver on the morning train. Judge Samuel Harrison carried himself with the authority of 30 years on the bench. His weathered face had seen justice served and denied in equal measure. Sheriff Bradley met him at the station with a wagon and a full report. By noon, the courthouse buzzed with activity. Word spread quickly through Copper Creek. Justice had come to town. Zeke stood beside Serafina as they entered the courtroom. Her inheritance. Papers rested in a leather portfolio. Legal proof of her rights. Evidence that would determine everything. Judge Harrison examined the documents with careful attention. His fingers traced signatures and seals. His eyes weighed evidence against law. "These papers appear genuine," he said finally. "The will is properly witnessed. The inheritance legally transferred." Clayton Whitmore's forged warrant crumbled under scrutiny. The fake marshals sat in chains, their lies exposed. Truth had sharp edges that cut through deception. "Miss Carter, you are the rightful heir to the Whitmore estate." Relief flooded through Serafina. Years of running. Years of fear. All ending with words spoken in a mountain courtroom. But Judge Harrison was not finished. However, enforcing your rights requires federal protection. Mr. Whitmore has resources, connections. He will not accept this decision quietly. What do you recommend? Establish yourself here permanently. Make this community your home. Local ties create legal standing that transcends state boundaries. Zeke stepped forward. "Your Honor, I would like to marry Miss Carter. Make her my wife legally and completely." The judge's eyes moved between them, measuring the truth of their commitment. "Is this your desire, Miss Carter?" Serafina looked at Zeke, this man who had chosen to stand with her, who had faced down prejudice and danger for her sake. "It is." "Then I will perform the ceremony myself, today, with the full protection of territorial law." The wedding took place in the courthouse at sunset. Mountain light streamed through tall windows. Sheriff Bradley served as witness. Marcus and Billy stood proud as family. Eleanor Patterson arrived with wildflowers gathered from the mountain meadows. Every bride deserves flowers on her wedding day. Other townspeople filled the available seats. Not all faces showed approval, but enough showed respect to matter. Judge Harrison's words carried weight beyond ceremony. "Do you, Ezekiel Harrington, take Serafina Bell Carter as your lawful wife? To protect and cherish regardless of what others may think or say?" "I do." "Do you, Serafina Bell Carter, take Ezekiel Harrington as your lawful husband? To stand with him through whatever trials may come?" "I do." "Then by the authority vested in me by the territory of Montana, I pronounce you husband and wife." The kiss that sealed their union tasted of hope and new beginnings. That evening, as celebration continued at the ranch, a familiar figure appeared in the lamplight. Margaret Harrington climbed down from the stage with travel bags and knowing. "Smile, sister." Zeke embraced her warmly. You came. I would not miss meeting my new sister properly. Margaret took Seraphine's hands in both of hers. I chose you specifically, you know. Chose me? From dozens of letters. Dozens of women seeking marriage. I chose you because my brother needed someone strong enough to challenge his foolish prejudices. Seraphina stared at her. You knew what you were doing. I hoped. I prayed. I trusted that love would find a way past fear. The revelation reframed everything. Margaret had orchestrated their meeting with careful intention. Had seen potential where others saw only problems. Thank you, Seraphina whispered. Thank you. For saving my stubborn brother from himself. Summer brought the fulfillment of dreams. Seraphina used her inheritance to establish the Copper Creek School. A building that welcomed all children, regardless of color or circumstance. Her first students included the Jennings children, Billy's younger sister from a neighboring ranch, sons and daughters of miners and ranchers alike, education without barriers. Wade Morrison left town rather than accept the changes. Some followed him, but most stayed and grew. The community bent toward justice. Slowly but surely. On the first day of school, Zeke stood in the doorway watching his wife teach. She moved among the children with natural grace, her voice patient and encouraging. Mrs. Harrington, little Mary Jennings raised her hand. What is the most important thing to learn? Seraphina smiled. That every person has worth. That kindness is stronger than hatred, that hope can survive the darkest times. The children bent over their slates, copying letters and numbers. Building futures one lesson at a time. After school, Seraphina and Zeke walked home through streets that had become truly theirs. The mountains rose around them in evening light. Their shadows stretched long across the valley floor. Any regrets? He asked. Only that it took so long to find our way here. Sometimes the longest journeys lead to the best destinations. They reached the ranch as stars emerged overhead. Home in every sense that mattered. A place built on more than land and cattle. Built on acceptance and love. A year later, another train whistle echoed through the valley. Another young woman stepped onto the platform with hope and uncertainty in equal measure. Billy waited nervously, his best hat in his hands. Zeke and Seraphina watched from the wagon as the introduction took place. Billy's bride carried herself with quiet dignity. Her dark skin and proud, bearing familiar echoes of another arrival. She looks frightened, Seraphina observed. Billy will be kind. You taught us all how to see past surface differences. They approached the couple with welcoming smiles. Extended hands in friendship. Offered the gift of acceptance that had transformed their own lives. Welcome to Copper Creek, Seraphina said warmly. Welcome home. The young woman's tears came then. Relief and gratitude in equal measure. The same tears that had once traced Seraphine's cheek on a distant platform. But these tears fell on ground made fertile by courage. On soil prepared by those who had chosen love over fear. On earth that would nurture whatever hope dared to take root. The mountains held them all in evening shadow. The town spread below. In comfortable light. Children's laughter echoed from the schoolhouse yard. Change had come to Copper Creek, not the violent upheaval some had feared. The quiet transformation that happens when hearts open to truth. Seraphina Harrington stood, surrounded by family chosen and blood. Her inheritance had built more than a school. It had built a community where worth was measured by character rather than color. The single tear that had started everything had been seed as much as sorrow. Planted in mountain soil, it had grown into something beautiful. Something that would endure long after the names were forgotten. Long after the struggles faded into history, love had won. As it always does when given the chance. As it always will, and that is all to the story for now. Please let me know where you are tuning in from, perhaps we will create a story there. Consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you enjoy our content, click this video on your screen. I promise you it's worth watching. See you tomorrow.